Welcome to MeDeMAP, Mapping Media for Future Democracies. Join us on a journey across Europe. Meet specialists and researchers from various fields, unravel the democratic functions of media, and discuss its impact on the essence of democracy. MeDeMAP.
Hello everyone who listens to us or watches us on every platform. This is MeDeMAP podcast. Welcome. And I'm honored to have here the team from IULM University in Milan, and namely Andrea Miconi, who's a full professor at the Department of Media, Arts and Communication at IULM University Milan, and Giulia Ferri, researcher from IULM University Milan. So Giulia, Andrea, welcome. So as you are leading the work on, as we call it, demand side of our project. So please, I would challenge you to say what is it and why it makes sense and huge importance for the project.
Yes, the work package, these projects are split, organized into a series of so-called work packages. Work package 5 is about the demand side, and it's the one we are coordinating with the research being run in all the countries of the consortium. And yes, demand side, because there is, generally speaking, there is the overall organization of the project. So we have the offer side, and then we have also to take care of people's understanding of what democracy is and which is the connection and the best possible connection between media and democracy. This is, for the balance of the finding and the results. I think there's something more, because working on the demand side means something. As my background is sociology, and I'm basically a sociologist, we firmly believe in the need of never being judgmental, and obviously asking people about what democracy is according to them is the ideal way, in our opinion, not in my opinion. I think Giulia would easily agree on that, to avoid this normative approach, which is usually very common in any discourse around democracy, which is a sort of paradox, because obviously democracy should be based on the fact that anyone's standpoint and point of view should have the same value and the same importance. But obviously, when in the academic field, not to mention the regulatory and political field, I would not even mention them, but even in academy, when we talk about democracy, we sort of believe we are in the position of lecturing people about what democracy should be, especially in these times, which we know are tricky and dangerous, are savage times. But it's also very easy to label a common diffuse point of view as anti-democratic or populist and blah 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 in the usual things. And I think that what is key to coming to terms with the state of democracy is also asking people, coming to terms with what people think about democracy, what democracy is not, what democracy used to be and maybe should be now. So I think that this part, which is the totally non-judgmental and non-evaluative implication of the work package, I think is, we are still processing the data. Giulia is doing that for us. I think this is the most promising part in terms of overall political impact of the findings, besides the academic findings, the publications, and the things we are used to.
I would assume asking what is democracy can be frustrating for people. This is hard to combine it all together. But if you could try to bring some patterns that you find when asking this really complex question, what patterns do you see across these European countries?
Yeah, obviously, as you said, Tatiana, when we have to work and to analyze, or at least to interpret what democracy is, what democracy should be, from the point of view of so many European citizens, because we are talking of a range of people that it's over 400 people that participated in this project. So there are a lot of personal perspective and stories from different national contexts. We have to be very careful in order to evaluate what general or transnational patterns seems to emerge. I would personally call as a general pattern that seems to emerge from all the countries is a systemic and functional skepticism. Because people in all the countries seems to be very aware of the democratic panorama and the role of the media in democracy. With personal, I think we in academia, but also in politics and the media ecosystem, do not consider too much many times. As Andrea said, a lot of time we have this kind of superior perspective where we think that since we are in academia or since we are professional in media and political system, we can judge and we can, in a kind of way, indicate to people how they should do, how the things should go. But actually, what we are seeing from this data is that normal citizens really are aware of what is going on in democracy, what are the threats, what should be the potentialities, and especially what they really would like to have in a democratic systems. And this systemic and functional element emerged because people always said, we still believe, we have strong belief in the idea of democracy, the idea of freedom of speech, of equality, of inclusion. Yeah, that idea still remain very strong. The problems that they can see very clear is that there are some gaps in their reality, in their everyday lives. And since our project is focused on the relation between media and democracy, we immediately have seen how citizens connect these gaps to the media ecosystem. So a lot of time when we ask people, okay, but what is this gap in democracy? Several times in several countries, they told us, well, one of the main problems is how the media work, is the media ecosystems that maybe could have in traditional, for example, panorama of the TV or print media related to, for example, problem of censorship or partiality. In the digital and social media ecosystem is related to disinformation, polarization. So we have a very, we could say, aware European citizens panorama in front of us. And I think this is one of the most interesting elements that seems to emerge at the moment.
And as you said, you had actually a huge amount of data in front of you, and just there, like a lot of work in front of you that is still ongoing. But if you could say something that maybe that surprised you when you were looking at this data, what could come up for you, for instance? What was unexpected knowledge that you have?
Well, if I could speak for myself, one of the most interesting element was the educational aspect that seems to connect very well media and democracy and the citizens in all of its aspects, from the more, we could say, idealistic perspective on what democracy and media should do and should be together, but also to a more, we could say, concrete way of participating of the citizens, because the educational element emerged as one of the main requests from the citizens in terms of what media should do. In educational terms, we are talking about civic role, civic education, political education, media literacy also. So it includes several aspects of, we could say, the educational of the citizens package. But also in terms of participation, because we investigate a lot also this element of the agency of the citizens, we have seen how for the people, participation is not closed exclusively to the more traditional and institutional actions like I go to vote, I take part in, mobilization or petitions online, but also the educational personal education of the citizens. So a citizen to participate has to be informed, has to be educated, and the education passes through also a personal agency that take part in an active and responsible consumption through the media, but also an active and we could say very aware form of interaction with the media. So media, especially social media these days, are considered by European citizens as a very powerful, also tricky sometimes, but powerful tool in order to maybe educate also the citizens around themselves and to, in a kind of way, also contrast, for example, the problem of polarization, the echo chambers that we are know very well about it. So I think this educating aspect is one of the most important things that we should work on in the future. And also at European level, we should really take in consideration this element.
A footnote to that. Additionally, what we were somehow expecting to find and we didn't find is the naive interpretation of social media participation, which were used to the idea that obviously using digital social networks would empower people, allow people to step in and participate to public debate, as if this were a sort of automatic process. I have this tool, and then this would grant me the access to the field of public opinion, public debate, well, whatever. You name it. I think that this naive idea of social media revolutions, Twitter revolutions is no longer with us. And this also somehow tells us that people's perception is maybe less stupid and less uneducated and less naive than in some cases we suppose it to be. This is a small detail compared to what you were saying, but I was quite reassured. I wouldn't say surprised, but reassured.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. This aspect that it's probably also related to what we said before. So this, we could say, systemic, but also very awareness skepticism that we have seen is very important, because it shows to the European Union and to us in academia also that we have in front of us people that are very aware of the media ecosystems and the role and the power that these media have today, both in terms of critical elements, so what is not working on, but what are also the potentialities for it. So I think this is a great result for us.
But so you mentioned different types of media. Do you see any connections between what and how people consume the media and how do they participate? Are they engaged in democracy? Do you have some vision for now?
Well, being a qualitative investigation, obviously we do not have a quantitative matrix that could maybe create comparisons and provide you with a very short and cohesive, we could say, answer to this question. I personally think that we do not have seen from both generational, for example, terms, but also media use terms, differences in relation to the approach of the citizens. Because, for example, I remember very well focus groups where we had people over 35 that use both traditional and social media, and they have a kind of an approach to democracy or the media ecosystems that could be very similar to the generational ones that could use exclusively the social media. There are not so many differences in these terms. And I think this is interesting also because a lot of times academia tend to focus to categorize the audience, categorize the citizens. We always want to have like, okay, the youngest think this, the older think this. This is interesting for sure, but I think personally that for a concrete help for the citizens, especially in European situation that we have today, we have to consider the global also perspective that seems to emerge. And from our results, it doesn't emerge very differences in this term, because the older one and the youngest one have the same perspectives in terms of what are the problems and what could be the solution. And I thought that this was a very interesting element also that emerged. So they have the same perspective. Obviously, we can see maybe to the older generation that tend to use in their daily life the TV, but they were very aware of the importance and the possibilities that social media can provide, because they maybe interact with the youngest one, with their sons, their daughters, their nephews, and they say, okay, I see them that they use in their daily life the social media, and that could help them. So we have a very aware and critical people around all the generations, and not focused exclusively or filtered and closed in their media use, their daily media use, I think.
It's actually the great that you mentioned this intersectionality that we're trying to that you going through like without generalizing strictly on age, gender, and everything. So this it sounds like it sounds like the result would be like the final result would be really interesting on this. And talking about finally, like what is your vision? How this finding actually can enforce, can straighten, could help make democratic media system in Europe more endure, stronger?
Well, how to do that? That's the difficult part of these projects. MeDeMAP is part of what the European Commission calls the RIA, Research and Innovation Actions, which means you are expected not simply to produce scientific results, this is our daily job, but also to come out with, let's say, concrete operational recommendations to regulators. Then in our experience, this is not our first European project, dialogue with the regulators is not that easy as they say. So honestly, this is for sure the most difficult part. I would say, I think that changing the way we look at these issues, these topics might be the very first recommendation from my side at least. In short, we are, let's say, we had this discussion in Singapore during a big conference. We presented the results of this work package, and different partners last summer of the MeDeMAP project were with us, including the coordinator, the Austrian Academy of Sciences. And at some point, there is something hit me, the idea that maybe we are not looking in the right place. Which means, yes, we have doing all these diagnoses or how bad the situation is. So the problem is obviously trust and distrust, the democratization, people no longer trust, people no longer trust. Maybe in the end, we are not looking in the same place and we are judging what people do and think in negative terms. Distrust, yeah, that's okay. People do not trust politics, but people do trust something else. I think it's time to flip the discourse. Yeah. Or let's say to make a step forward. So next, because I mean, this project will come to an end in 5 months. And at this stage of the project, the word which would come to mind is usually legacy. We had years, partners, dozens of beautiful colleagues, beautiful experience, also a lot of money because these projects are well funded. Now, what after the project? Maybe after the project, we have to use the results to sort of build a new kind of awareness. Maybe we should start looking at what people trust, where people see democracy. Maybe people no longer see democracy in institutions. Maybe they want something else to be democratic, which is, I don't know, their daily life environment, even their physical environment, their close circle of I don't know, acquaintances and people they know. I would say next project should be a bit about this thing.
Yeah, and if I can add just one final element that I just remember from the interviews and the focus groups that we had in Italy, a lot of people told us that this type of project that let also the people to talk and to provide us with their perspective and their personal also experiences and emotions in relation to the democratic environment is already for the citizens an important step in order to let actually the people, the community to emerge and to provide a testimony in general speaking, because obviously our work will be free online, you can read it. So for them, for the normal citizens, but also for the professional in journalism or other people in academia, it could be helpful just to have, okay, here are the voices of the people that usually maybe are just numbers and quantitative analysis. No, we have the quotes, we have their voices there. And I think this is also important.
Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
Have a nice day today.
Thanks.
And yeah, thank you very much for watching or listening, and subscribe. Bye-bye.
Bye.